Welcome to Cybersecurity Awareness TV, episode number 458, recorded May 25th, 2024. Join me, Professor Mac Jackson, as we navigate through the digital landscape. Gear up for a thrilling ride, folks. From cybersecurity tips, news, and gain expert knowledge on how to become cyber champion. And remember, folks, subscribe down below and like our show. And also, folks, defend yourself against the fastest growing crimes of 21st century. You can find out more about my show and cybersecurity preparedness by going to my website. That's at macjacksonjr.com. That's macjacksonjr.com. In today's episode, in cybersecurity news, we're going to talk about Ascension healthcare attack, the update up to that. We're also going to delve into the water infrastructure warnings by the FBI, as well as hospital system scams and ransomware attacks. In our second segment, FBI scams that we were very concerned with. That's the increasing scams with the elderly. Folks, those stories and more, what we have here on Cybersecurity Awareness TV when we return.
Introducing CS Now Staffing, led by yours truly, Laura Nowlin. As the founder and president, I bring over 17 years of expertise in sourcing for talent, building winning teams of professionals, marketing, and workforce development. At CS Now Staffing, we're not just a staffing agency. We're your strategic partner in building a winning team of professionals for your business. My passion for community service extends to connecting entrepreneurs with local resources. Recognized by the Small Business Administration as the 2022 Nevada Family-Owned Business of the Year, we're not just changing the workforce landscape, we're defining it.
Hey folks, welcome back to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. Cyber attacks are increasingly targeting critical systems and infrastructures in our nation, including the healthcare is no exception for this, folks. The recent Ascension Healthcare has a prominent U.S. healthcare network experienced a significant cyber attack that disrupted operations across 140 hospitals and 40 senior living facilities in 19 states. Folks, this was absolutely disasters across our country due to ransomware attacks in the healthcare industry. This event underscores the urgent need for robust cybersecurity measures in the healthcare sector. Ascension Healthcare responded to the cyber attack by shifting its strategy. They enlisted a specific cybersecurity firm to investigate the data breach and respond to these efforts. The incident underscores the importance of proactive cybersecurity strategies in safeguarding sensitive patient data and maintaining operational integrity. It also highlights the increasing threat of ransomware attacks on hospitals, making the need for such strategies even more pressing. The U.S. healthcare industry, with its frequent mergers and acquisitions, represents a unique vulnerability to attacks. These business activities can create security gaps that cyber criminals are quickly to exploit. They often demand ransomware payments that further incentivize the attacks. To protect the healthcare industry systems, essentially those during these acquisitions and mergers, implementing multi-factor authentication and other advanced cybersecurity protocols is not just a benefit to the organizations, it is essential that we do this. To add to this story, folks, I have something I want you to see coming to us from CBS News.
The Ascension Healthcare Network says its clinical operations were disrupted Wednesday by a cybersecurity event. The company says it responded immediately and is working to remedy the situation. Ascension is one of the nation's leading nonprofit and Catholic health systems with 140 hospitals and 40 senior living facilities across 19 states and Washington, D.C. Ascension has also brought in a cybersecurity firm to help investigate the attack. It will inform patients if their data has been compromised. Our Homeland Security and Justice reporter, Nicole Skanga, joins me now for more. Nicole, what more do we know about the breach? And do we know what kind of data was compromised?
Yeah, John, we know this cyber attack disrupted the network of a major healthcare system and that it's impacted clinical operations. As you mentioned, 140 hospitals here, 40 senior care facilities across 19 states. Now, the company reported in May that it had 134,000 employees, including doctors who are now relying on paper records like we're back in 1980 or 1990. We still don't know how many patients were impacted or how much data might have been compromised, but Ascension did say in a statement today they'll notify and support any individuals impacted by this.
Now, this comes a few months after United Health Group was hacked. Any similarities other than the fact they're in the same space, but any similarities between those two events?
Well, the fact that they were in the same space, I think, is important, and it underscores just how vulnerable the U.S. healthcare system is to cyber incidents. So vulnerable, in fact, top U.S. officials are actually predicting future cyber attacks. I sat down with HHS Secretary Javier Becerra a few weeks ago. He told me that every hospital, every doctor's office, and most importantly, every healthcare network in America should be asking themselves the question, are we next? Now, the attack on United Health subsidiary Change Healthcare targeted an IT provider, and today we're talking about a healthcare system. But because in both cases the networks took their system offline proactively, it impacted hospitals and pharmacies and doctors' offices' ability to do their business. And that's a really dangerous prospect when you're in the business of saving lives. In both cases, there are also concerns about whether sensitive health records have been compromised. And we know that in the case of Change Healthcare, there are individuals whose personally identifiable information were stolen by cyber criminals.
Just building on your point there, the threat intelligence company Cyble says there's been 105 ransomware attacks on the healthcare sector globally, beginning in February, 77 of them in the United States. What's up with, are hospitals particularly vulnerable? Why are they a rich target?
Yeah, this is a growing number of hospitals now that have been impacted by ransomware attacks. Part of the reason the U.S. remains a target, we're a major player in the Internet of Things. What do I mean by that? Our healthcare systems, our records are largely digital. Our data is a ripe target for cyber criminals. And we're not alone in that. We've seen major cyber attacks hit the UK health system back in 2017, Ireland's health service hit in 2021, but the U.S. a massive target here. Another reason the U.S. has seen a number of healthcare acquisitions and mergers. Those kinds of moves often make the acquired companies more vulnerable to attacks because their cyber hygiene may not be at its best when they're about to get swallowed up by a larger company. And that certainly was the case for Change Healthcare. Their affected server did not have multi-factor authentication, that extra layer of security. The last thing here, as long as healthcare providers continue to pay these ransoms, and United Health paid a $22 million one in February, we're going to continue to see cyber criminals going after the U.S. healthcare system.
Right, fertile territory. 30 seconds. Any solutions here for either customers worried about their data or for these companies?
Well, I think the number one takeaway is federal law requires healthcare organizations to post online if there have been any security breaches that expose patient information. So if you're someone who is worried about your personal information being stolen by cyber criminals connected to one of these ransomware incidents, you should go on HHS's website and you can sign up for credit monitoring services. Many of the affected companies will offer that service to patients for free. Make sure that you are protected in that way, John.
Nicole Skanga in Washington. Really great, Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, federal regulators mandated that these hospitals and healthcare organizations disclose security breaches, essentially the ones that involve the individual's personal identifiable information, and also to consider offering credit monitoring services to their patients. The Ascension Healthcare incident is a striking reminder of the growing cybersecurity challenges facing healthcare industries and all infrastructure industries in our country, folks, of the critical importance of defending ourselves against these type of cyber attacks. Cyber criminals are increasingly targeting U.S. water plant systems. In a recent exploitation of a water systems infrastructure here in the U.S., the vulnerabilities such as these systems are updating their passwords, right? The water facilities need to update their passwords to have better cybersecurity postures within their organization. These attacks pose a significant risk to increased water disruptions, chemical alterations, and also disasters of public health care systems. Folks, this is absolutely imperative that across the country, our water systems and all infrastructures considering power, water, gas must have proper cybersecurity procedures in place. A significant development in the ongoing issues in a recent report by the EPA to emphasize the analysis that underscores a surge in cyber attacks on water facilities and urge that the need to have enhanced cybersecurity protective measures. The EPA report has drawn attention to the critical nature of securing water treatment processes, emphasizing the importance of a robust IP protection and a stringent cybersecurity hygiene. The water utilities vulnerability, often compounded by limited resources and outdated infrastructure, the cause of concern, says a leading cybersecurity consultant. These type of crimes used by actors, malicious actors that is, including our nation states like China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, they use high-profile techniques to use these type of attacks to exploit our essential systems. Recent incidents involving pro-Russian activists and other groups linked to Iran target U.S. water facilities have raised severe alarms about the potential threats to the nation's drinking water supplies. Folks, I have a story I want you to take a look at to emphasize this report, coming to us again from CBS News.
As we reported Monday, the Environmental Protection Agency warned that cyber attacks against water utilities are becoming more frequent and more damaging nationwide. The agency is now urging systems to take immediate actions to protect the nation's drinking water, but officials said about 70% of utilities inspected by the EPA over the past year violated standards meant to prevent breaches or other intrusions. CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skanga has been looking into this story and joins me now for more. Nicole, it's good to be with you. How do these malicious actors target water plants, and why are water plants vulnerable?
Yeah, here's the big question. Why are hackers going after U.S. drinking water? And what is the actual threat here that we're talking about? Cybersecurity. The EPA has an answer, and it's something that cybersecurity experts have been screaming about for years. Now, because water utilities rely on computer software to remotely operate treatment plants and processing and distribution centers, IT protection is actually really key to water utilities, and cyber hygiene is really important. So the EPA right now is shouting at water utilities who have been falling short in big ways, failing to change default passwords, not cutting off access to the system for former employees. And that has real life implications. Interruptions to water treatment and storage, damage to pumps and valves. We've seen that, something we have not seen, but is a big concern. The alteration of chemical levels in water. And just to give you a sense of how under-resourced water utilities are, the American Water Works Association report this year says roughly 1 in 5 small water utilities say they have low to no ability to advance cybersecurity.
So who might be behind this? And is the objective to, or maybe it ranges, is the objective to poison everybody or just create mayhem and chaos while maybe their other branch is off creating some other chaos somewhere else?
Strong emphasis on mayhem and chaos, and I'm glad that you brought it up. 3 big players in this field: China, Iran, and Russia. And earlier this month, the nation's top cybersecurity agency, CISA, called on pro-Russian hacktivists to stop targeting technology safeguarding water systems as a result of U.S. aid to Ukraine. So politically driven, right? Also, late last year, you might have heard of the Cyber Avengers. They're an Iranian-linked group that targeted a water utility in Pennsylvania. They were going after Israeli technology at that utility as a response to the Israel-Hamas war. You've also probably heard of Volt Typhoon. FBI Director Christopher Wray always talks about the FBI's moves to take that Chinese-linked group down, and they have been living within U.S. critical infrastructure.
So what do they do? So if the water systems are under-resourced, can't do it, what's the federal government trying to do, or any other actor trying to keep this from happening? Yeah,
last March, over a year ago, the EPA put into effect a new rule requiring states to audit cybersecurity for their water utilities. And guess what happened? 3 states and 2 trade groups sued, accusing the EPA of overstepping their authority there. Arkansas, Missouri, and Iowa. Now, this EPA bulletin doesn't have many teeth to it, but it's meant to send a message, much like a letter from National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan to governors earlier this year. Part of the challenge, John, is that water utilities are not owned and operated by the federal government, right? Public water systems are usually nonprofits that are, led and managed by local or state governments. So how do you regulate them? Well, Congress does have some ideas. And as recently as last week, House lawmakers introduced a new bill that would establish something new, the Water Risk and Resilience Organization, a new governing body that would oversee cyber regulations to water, utilities, and wastewater systems. We will see how that fares on Capitol Hill.
In response to the EPA has introduced a new rule, right, requiring that states conduct a cybersecurity audit for all water facilities. Now, again, folks, let's emphasize that. In response to these types of attacks, the EPA, federal level, has introduced new rules. That means new rules or regulations coming down from the federal level to all states that must maintain a cybersecurity audit on their water facilities. This mandate can spark, of course, legal challenges as well between states' rights and federal rights, right? Again, folks, it's a fight that we must have. We must work together on this, work with our federal government and state organizations to maintain these types of audits. Meanwhile, Congress itself is considering more regulations, folks, to address these cybersecurity gaps, underscoring the critical need for a comprehensive measure to safeguard the nation's water utilities from cyber threats. Folks, again, these type of threats are something that we all should be concerned with. In today's rapid evolving technology landscape, the intersection of cybersecurity and election integrity has never been more critical. Renowned cybersecurity expert Chris Krebs recently highlighted the most outstanding type of cyber attacks, or I should say the most vigilant type of cyber attacks, that have been done by these cyber criminals using a technique called artificial intelligence, AI, folks. And they're trying to integrate it within our election systems to lessen the integrity of our elections, urging the importance of these types of attacks and the importance of investing in cybersecurity resilience to all of our voting systems. Despite the concrete evidence, persistent claims that the elections were fraud continues to create baseless allegations under our public trust and our election process, according to the former director, Chris Krebs, right? He's the one that was in charge of it, and he has said that it is definitely, we have the strongest election procedures in place of all times right now, especially knowing that these hackers are trying to affect our American way of life. Implementing long-term elections is a key point that will be addressed by Congress and by all state election departments across our country. These periods are essential to detecting and eradicating potential issues before the election day. Unlike the other times of our opponents stating that there are fraudulent elections, it has been determined that these elections are safe, according to cybersecurity expert Chris Krebs, who underscores the importance of this. Folks, we must maintain vigilance and understand clearly that we have people on our side, our government, that are doing absolutely the top line of defense to protect us from these types of attacks. Here's a story emphasize what Chris Krebs talked about, coming to us from Face the Nations by CBS.
And we're joined now by CBS News cybersecurity expert and analyst Chris Krebs, who is the former director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Good to have you back.
Good to be back.
So in our polling that we just carried out in Arizona in particular, it was a center of election denialism back in 2020, and we're seeing this again. I mean, nearly half of Trump's supporters say the 2024 presidential results in Arizona should be investigated and challenged if Biden wins. 7 in 10 from those who identify themselves as MAGA. Is this going to be a repeat of 2020? I mean, what's going to happen?
Well, all these claims are despite any credible evidence being presented in the courts or, to everyone else and the experts out there. We're continuing to see claims of problems with 2020, even 2022, the midterms. So I think the incentive structures, the way they're aligned right now, it creates plenty of room and a permissive environment for those to allege that there are problems, again, despite any credible evidence, and continued investments in election security, election resilience, modernizing election systems. You know, back in 2020, we talked about having 95% or so of ballots, cast on paper. Now that number is probably closer to 98. So we have made improvements over the last several years.
It's interesting you make that point about paper because on the campaign trail, Donald Trump claims 2020 was rigged, claims 2024 might be as well. Listen to what he just said.
Our goal on election will be one-day voting with paper ballots, proof of citizenship, and voter ID. It's very simple. If you want to save America in your Second Amendment, register, get an absentee or mail-in ballot, vote early or vote on election day. I don't care.
So two things there. Now he is for mail-in ballots. He was against them in 2020. But you just said there already is a paper trail. He's saying there is none.
The vast majority of votes cast in the United States right now are with a paper trail. There is a small percentage that are recorded down on election systems, but that's for accessibility purposes, for those that may have visual impairment or otherwise. And it's important to ensure open and accessible voting processes. The one-day voting, this push, this drive, it's actually counterproductive. It actually is counter to participation in the democratic system and resilience and security. That longer run-up, the weeks, month, in advance of the election, it allows us to detect if there are any issues, get on top and fix them. If you had an election on one single day, life happens first. Somebody might get sick, you could get in a car accident, you might not be able to get to the polls. But if something happens early on, it could have this cascading catastrophic impact on getting people to the polls and voting on election day. So I'm much more in favor of the system we have now with early voting, with mail-in and absentee ballots.
So the Director of National Intelligence, your successor at CISA, Jenna Easterly, also testified that they are so prepared, election infrastructure has never been more secure. But then we also hear from U.S. intelligence that China, for example, is experimenting with things like generative AI to influence voters. How do people understand that influence effort versus actually tinkering with ballots?
I think that's the right distinction. There's interference, which is the technical manipulation of systems. And as Jen Easterly, my successor at CISA, said earlier this week in the Senate hearing, the investments we're making, the continued improvements across systems, I would even suggest that when we said in 2020 that it was a safe and secure election, it's even more safe, secure now because those continued investments, because the continued improvements across those systems. But to your point on influence, the scope, the scale, the technology available to our adversaries, including AI and deepfakes, it is a much more precarious threat environment. The Chinese are active. The Russians are very active. They've been using deepfakes in Europe. We've seen AI pop up in Moldova, Slovakia, else Bangladesh. So it is going to be a tool. My sense, however, though, is threats that are AI-powered or AI-enabled will be much like what happened in New Hampshire with the robocall. It'll be immediately detected, it will be investigated quickly, and it will be prosecuted. And that's what's happening right now. I think the biggest concern, though, is that this is cumulative. It's accretive. So rather than one single catastrophic AI-enabled event, it's going to be a steady drumbeat where the voters, the public, are just going to lose confidence and trust in the overarching information ecosystem.
And we're seeing that in our polling already.
Some might say that's part of a strategy.
That's scary.
Absolutely.
CNN was reporting both the Chinese and Iranian governments had tried to use fake AI content back in 2020, but chose not to deploy it. Is that accurate?
I can't speak to the specific intelligence there. It should not be a surprise, though. We've been talking about deep fakes and AI as a risk vector for years, for half a decade at least. So to say that whether it's the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, the North Koreans, whomever, have been tinkering or researching this technology as recently as 4 years ago, I think that's entirely credible. We are seeing it now, though. We are seeing, as I mentioned, already in Europe. We're seeing it here as well. And I would expect that between now and the election, we will continue to see AI-created content pop up. And this is where it's important for the tech platforms to ensure they're on the lookout for it, that the AI companies are ensuring that their platforms cannot be manipulated. The challenge, of course, though, is there are open source models that can be used.
And we need to keep talking to you about this, unfortunately, in the months to come, because it sounds like it'll be a persistent issue.
The significant increase in AI and deepfake technologies utilized by adverse nation states such as China, North Korea, and Russia is very alarming. These sophisticated tools are increasingly becoming used to compromise a nation's security and disrupt our public trust of information. Mr. Krebs emphasizes the absolute necessity to shift detection, investigation, and prosecution of AI-powered threats. This is a critical step to prevent the erosion of our public confidence in information and our ecosystem. He calls on technical platforms and AI companies, as well as policies makers, elected officials, and cybersecurity professionals to remain vigilant and proactive in combating these manipulated types of techniques used by our enemies. Your role is very, very pivotal in this trust in maintaining cybersecurity awareness for all of us here in our nation. Folks, like we always say every time here on this show, Cybersecurity Awareness TV, criminals are always looking for ways to exploit us and exploit our information in the U.S. We must stay vigilant, and the best way to do that, folks, is to stay aware. Have your employees trained in cybersecurity awareness. Folks, like we always say, hashtag stay cyber woke. We'll be back after these messages. Hello, folks. This is Mac Jackson Jr. from Vanderson Cyber Group. The problem with businesses today is that they are affected by cyber attacks from around the world, but companies are not sure of what to do. Normally, they are reactive instead of proactive. But folks, cyber attacks can affect your bottom line, and it will affect you financially, legally, and your business reputation. Here at Vanderson Cyber Group, we can help you develop a policy by training your employees on what to do if they are involved in a cyber attack and how to mitigate it and fight against it. Folks, we call it here hashtag stay cyber woke. And that's Vanderson Cyber Group here in Las Vegas and around the world. You can reach me, folks, at VandersonCyberGroup.com or my website, MacJacksonJr.com as well. Here locally, 702-868-0808. Give us a call today, folks. We must fight back. Hi, folks. Welcome back to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. In this segment, we're going to talk about the FBI warnings against the increasing elderly scams that are growing across our country, folks. We've talked about this on our show several times over the years, folks, and it seems that these criminals are always looking for ways to exploit our elderly when it comes to cyber crimes by use of technology. The threat of elderly fraud crimes has gone through the roof, as they say, from the U.S. Justice Department, and we have a story to pinpoint this coming to us from Indiana. Shocking last year that over 1,100 elderly individuals in the state of Illinois fell victim to this type of scam, resulting in a striking of more than that is $26 million in losses that these elderlies were convinced to by these scammers to take their money away. In response to this, the FBI has organized critical workshops across the country for the elderly to learn and understand these important tools, and for the elderly's loved ones also to represent them when it comes to these types of attacks and keep them abreast of what's happening. The surge of the elderly fraud is a direct coincidence of a rapid increase in this types of scams that are known as pig butchering, romance scams, using technologies, and victims by means of technology to fight against them. Folks, there's this information here we must share with our elderly. I have a video to show you, folks, coming to us from Indiana, Fox 59 News.
Welcome back. Scams targeting Hoosier seniors are on the rise, and they're getting more and more sophisticated. New statistics from the FBI show that here in Indiana, Roughly 1,100 victims over the age of 60 filed complaints with a total financial loss of more than $26 million last year. And that's only from people who came forward to report it. So how can you protect yourself or your loved ones from falling victim to one of these scams? The FBI Indianapolis Citizens Academy Alumni Association is hosting a free workshop to try and help. And joining me this morning to talk a little bit about this is FBI Special Agent in charge for the Indianapolis Field Office, Herbert Stapleton. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
This is a really important topic. We know that sometimes the elderly are, bigger targets for scams, but there's been a lot, in past years that we're used to that they can maybe recognize. But talk about how these have become more sophisticated and really harder to spot.
Yeah, so I think as the technology evolves, the techniques of the scammers evolve with them. And so what we really see is a lot of age-old techniques, but enabled by newer technology. So as people conduct more business online, like banking and other types of personal business, they put more personal information online. And then, of course, at the very cutting edge, there are things like AI that allow people to replicate, the voices or pictures of perhaps loved ones, or use those types of technological techniques to make their scams even more convincing.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm online a lot. I use the internet a lot. We talk about these scams, and there's even been situations where, I'm trying to sell something online where I think, is this fake? And I've almost gotten pretty far into it. So I can imagine someone who's, not as familiar, it can be really easy to fall for these.
Yeah, I think that's one of the misconceptions too, is a lot of people think that, just because you get scammed, that means you're somehow naive, but it really is, many of these scams are very, very convincing, and that's why we have to make sure that we do the best we can for awareness and education of everybody, including older Americans, to make sure that we can prevent as many of these scams as possible.
Absolutely. What kind of advice do you have for people to spot one of these, whether it's you're looking out for your loved one or even yourself? What are things that should raise a red flag for you to say, well, something doesn't seem right here?
Yeah, one of the primary things is we often see these scammers trying to create a sense of urgency or time pressure. You have to act right now. And so when you get that sort of pressure from someone that you're communicating with online, it's right to be suspicious. Another one is, legitimate businesses don't contact you unsolicited and ask you to provide highly personal information like dates of birth and social security numbers, or financial information like bank accounts. And so those are probably the two main red flags that you always want to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, and you guys actually have a workshop coming up that's free. So tell us a little about when, where this is, how can people get involved to learn more?
So the FBI is just one part of a really comprehensive workshop that's being put on by our Citizens Academy Alumni Association and other sponsors. So we have a number of experts coming in. It's going to be at Westfield High School on Monday, June 10th, and it's going to be from 9:30 until 1 o'clock. Includes a free luncheon sponsored by the Citizens Academy Alumni Association. And so there's going to be a whole host of speakers, including speakers from the FBI, who will be able to give more in-depth tips about how to protect yourself from these types of scams and what to do if you have fallen victim to one of these.
Yeah, and we'll pull this graphic back up for you. Take your phone out or a piece of paper so you can write down that information. It is a free workshop. You do need to register for this. The information on your screen right now on how you can do that. If you would like to attend, you need to RSVP to Lisa Albano. Her number 463-215-2419. Again, it's right there on your screen, 463-215-2419. If you would like to send her an email rather than calling, her email address is lisa@scofhc.org. One more time, it's there on your screen, lisa@scofhs.org. We're going to include this information also on our website for you so that you can take a look at it. This is really great advice that I think anyone could use, even if you think I could spot a scam. They really are tricky these days.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we see really often is everybody has a vulnerability, right? Like all people have something that they might have a blind spot to. And so just because you fall victim to one of these doesn't mean that you're a bad person or naive or susceptible. And so what we really want to encourage people to do is don't be afraid to come forward. Don't be ashamed, don't be afraid, report it to law enforcement. talk to a trusted family friend or advisor, and that's the best way to make sure that we minimize the loss and maybe even be able to track down the bad guys and bring them to justice.
Yeah, that's always the goal. Special Agent Stapleton, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. There's that info one more time on your screen for you on how to RSVP for this event. Now, though, let's send it over to Jim with a check of our weather. Jim, how's it looking outside?
All right,
Folks, by attending these workshops with your elderly relative, you can definitely increase their understanding and increase the ways that we have across our country with the FBI in protecting our relatives and our loved ones against these types of attacks, folks. We must stay involved and continue our love with them and make sure that we fight back against these types of attacks, because these scammers will, again, continue to use any methods they can to try to take the money from your elderly. We've seen so many cases of this. We must do our best. If you have any questions about what to do or who to contact your local police in your town and the FBI. They will tell you of their next upcoming workshops and give you the techniques and tools you need to protect your elderly. Like we always say on this show, folks, our best defense is through education. We'll be right back after these messages.
welcome to WWDBTV.com. Hi, I'm Dr. Jeff McGee, and whether you have a phone, a laptop, an iPad, a computer station, this is a phenomenal studio that I've been invited to be one of a group of owners here in Las Vegas. And WWDBTV is a digital platformed provider that you need to know about. If you're coming into Las Vegas and you want to record some video, whether it's an infomercial, commercial, program, spotlight, employee engagement, whether you want to create your own online show, podcast, or program, whether you want to, in essence, come in and record a program that you want to share with people on a personal basis or a professional basis, or whether you want to create a program and even then have a studio station brand you can park it with, where we will co-promote it and put it out there on the internet, as well as on, in essence, Roku and other relationships we have, then this is where you want to stop in. Go to the internet and look us up. If you're watching us right now live, you already know where we are. But if you want to find out more about our operation at WWDBTV, then send us a message and we will connect back with you. We are ready to serve you.
Hi folks, welcome back to Cybersecurity Awareness TV. In this episode, we definitely delved into the latest of what's going on in cyber crimes affecting our nation. But folks, the question I have for all of you is, what can you do about it? Well, folks, the best thing we can do about it is stay alert, stay vigilant, and stay trained and educated on the latest in cybersecurity threats that can affect you, your family, and your business. One of the best ways you could do that, folks, is to have training. You can contact my company at Vanderson Cyber Group for cybersecurity awareness training to train your employees. That is our best line of defense against these types of cyber attacks. Keeping aware of what's going on, changing your password, understanding the difference between a password and a passphrase, all of these techniques can be learned very easily through our company, Vanderson Cyber Group. So for more information, definitely look us up, Vanderson Cyber Group, or go to my website at macjacksongr.com. MacJacksonGR.com. Folks, that's all we have for you this week. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week on Cybersecurity Awareness TV.